Good morning and welcome to the AlabamaWorks webinar series, a monthly webinar designed to provide information and speakers related to the workforce in Alabama. Past webinars are available on the AlabamaWorks website at alabamaworks.com. And now your host, Tim McCartney, Chair of the Alabama Workforce Council.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Alabama Workforce Council's monthly webinar for November of 2022. Today, we have a great lineup of three speakers who's going to cover a lot of ground. So take a comfortable seat and sit back and get ready to learn. Our first speaker this morning will be Dr. Lee Meadows, who is the Executive Director of the Alabama STEM Council. Lee is going to provide us an update about the state of the STEM education in Alabama. Following Lee, we have Mrs. Melissa Goldberg, who's Director of Competencies and Credentials at the Corporation for a Skilled Workforce. And Melissa is going to discuss the Alabama Occupational Ontology, which is a foundation of our talent triad. Following Melissa, we have Dr. Jeff Gray, who is the co-chair of the Governor's Computer Science Advisory Council. And Jeff's going to talk to us about the computer science education in Alabama's K-12 system. After that, Nick Moore will do the monthly labor market update, and we'll be done. So everybody get a good seat, and Lee Meadows, Dr. Meadows, you have the floor.
Great, thanks, Tim. Well, I appreciate the chance to be here and give you the state of STEM in Alabama as the STEM Council is seeing it. And here's the state of STEM. There's a lot of things to be hopeful about in Alabama, and I hope that's what you feel at the end of this brief overview, is that there is a sense of hope and a lot of good news about STEM in Alabama. If you're not familiar with the STEM Council, here's the big picture of our work. We've been around for a little over 2 years, and our work, you can see our mission there. As I've understood the work and really focused the council's work, it has been on improving STEM education so that Alabama gets the STEM workforce that it needs. Another way to think of that is basically if Alabama doesn't grow its own STEM workforce, we're probably not going to have one. So let's talk about some good things that are going on in STEM education as we build that STEM workforce. One of the things is the STEM Council has a STEM operations team now. It's not just me anymore. If you've been familiar with the STEM Council, it's been kind of a one-man show there for a while. But I am really happy to have on board now Lawrence Cooper and Renee McNeil, who've been on board since August 1st. They're both doing a great job. And a lot of the resources that I'm going to talk about and things, they're all on our website. So if you looked on our website under the What is STEM tab, you would find my contact information, Lawrence's and Renee's. Lawrence comes to us with 19 years experience from McWane Center. He is the STEM programs manager. The first 2 or 3 things I'm going to mention are in Lawrence's wheelhouse. Renee comes to us as our STEM ecosystems coordinator. It's a whole new initiative around STEM ecosystems. More of that later. But first, let's talk about some great things that are going on with programs. First, scale up. Alabama has some great STEM programs already out there. You may have known that, you may not have. That's one of the reasons for hope. There's a lot of good things going on. And the council is putting right now, investing $100,000 in 6 programs to scale them up. So to either help them get bigger or to help them expand their outreach from where they are now to another region in the state. Good things are happening at that. If you looked on our website under Educator Employer Host, you can find more about Scale Up, including a video of the 6 programs that are currently receiving funding. And applications will be open in the spring for another round of Scale Up funding. Another good thing that is going on in STEM is our teacher externship program. This program has been going on for 3 years. In the summer of 21, we had about 14 teachers. Last year, we had about 50 teachers, and we had almost 150 applicants. So in our STEM industry externship program, high school teachers and community college instructors get to go spend days out in a STEM industry to see. You can see that connection in the upper right-hand corner in that graphic of students ask, when will I ever need to know this stuff? I was a classroom teacher. I know kids ask that all the time. Well, getting teachers out into Alabama's STEM industry helps them answer that question, make real world connections. And we are planning another round of STEM externships. Applications will be open in the spring, and you can see where they are on our website. I got to participate in a lot of the debriefs this year with teachers this summer. And, you know, teachers love this. They just absolutely love being out in industry. So I've got a lot of hope around how teachers are making connections between their classroom and what's happening in STEM industries. One other program that we already have underway is STEM Near Me. So you can imagine that parents, guardians, people like that are trying to figure out where's a STEM program their kids can be in. Well, we have STEM Near Me off of our website under resources. And what you can do this now if you wanted to. You could type in where you are, the kind of program you're looking for, and you can find a program in your area in the state. This is a partnership with a national group called Science Near Me, where they are trying to do this across the country, and we're taking the lead in that program to help open a statewide website. STEM Near Me is open for business. We've got programs in there, we've got people using it, but with Lawrence Cooper's guidance, we're going to be building this thing out so that more parents, more guardians, more teachers, even more kids can use the site to find great STEM programs around them. One last program that I want to highlight is the Chief Science Officers program that we just are now launching. So CSOs are middle school students or high school students who are designated as the Chief Science Officer in their school. This is a national program that we are bringing to Alabama. I met some of these CSOs back in June at a national conference, and they are amazing young men and women who are taking a lead for science in their schools. Got a QR code there. Grab your camera if you're really quick. I'm going to be moving on in a second. But if you want to get the application form to nominate a school in your area to be part of the CSO program, we are looking for 25 middle schools to launch the program in and 25 high schools to launch the program in starting now. So grab the QR code or follow up with Renee McNeil afterwards to nominate a school. Now, the news is not all that good when you look on the ground in STEM education in schools. So the council has put together this STEM student performance dashboard. And if you look, you can see the red lines, excuse me, for proficiency in math and science across the years 2016 to the most recent data in 2022. And Alabama kids aren't doing well. This proficiency should be an indicator of kids who are ready to work. And you can see that we have never had a year in the years of testing where half or greater of Alabama students are proficient. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to build a STEM education system that gives us the STEM workforce that we need, but there is some hope here. If you dig back into all the curriculum and assessment and everything that we're doing in K-12, and especially these practices that are up on the screen, The ones in purple at the top are the computer science practices, the science and engineering practices, and the mathematical practices. There is a movement underway to change K-12 education to make it modern, a modern learning system. So that is happening now. There's just a lot of more work that needs to be done before we start moving the needle on these scores. So back to hope, back to what's happening good. So here are there are a couple of 2 or 3 big long-term initiatives that I want to highlight in the time that I have left, where the council is trying to move the needle statewide on some big picture issues. The first is You Teach Alabama. So the You Teach network are 50 universities nationwide that are ending the shortage of science and math teachers in their area. Our legislature has made a $4.5 million investment in You Teach Alabama. We have one You Teach site, which is UAB Teach. And in December, we will be announcing 4 or 5 new universities to join UAB Teach in producing more science and math teachers and moving toward ending the shortage of science and math teachers. So in a You Teach program, you can see that first bullet, STEM majors earn a teaching certificate with no extra time. There's the secret sauce. They keep a STEM major and they get a teaching certificate. And this program works. I know because I led the building of UAB Teach and I saw it working. So there's a lot of hope here that we may be in 3 to 5 years seeing a significant dent being made in the shortage. Another thing, I mentioned STEM ecosystems before. So there are 95 STEM ecosystems in the US. You can see the map there. You may also note that there are 0 in Alabama. A STEM ecosystem is really, it's where local leadership changes the local reality in STEM education to the STEM workforce pipeline. We started last week a 3-day process to design the Alabama STEM ecosystem, which will be the launch pad for local STEM ecosystems. Went really well last week. I've got a lot of hope around what will happen when we begin to do STEM ecosystems and how it will change the grassroots level in Alabama. That last bullet, though, especially if you're live today or you hear this in the next week, we need more industry leaders participating in this STEM ecosystem. So you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Renee McNeil if you are in industry or you know of an industry leader who can help us design STEM ecosystems that will give us the better workforce. One last note. So Alabama has an Alabama Numeracy Act that is going to change the way kids learn in math in grades K through 6, give them a good, strong foundation. The STEM Council is going to secure an external evaluator. Now, I can get really wonky here because I'm a PhD educator, but the bottom line is Alabama's never really had a good system for evaluating large-scale initiatives like this Numeracy Act. And the STEM Council is going to be on board from the beginning of the Numeracy Act to help get that external evaluation, that critical friend, that group that can help get the numeracy off, all the work on building numeracy off to a good start. And I guess the bottom line here is ROI, return on investment. The evaluation that we set up should be able to give us a good sense of the ROI of the money that we're putting into this and what kind of returns we're getting from it. So, quick tour. I would leave you with the idea of modern learning for a modern economy. You probably know that Alabama has a modern STEM economy booming across our state. You saw in the test score data, we don't have the modern learning system yet to support that, but you also saw all the things that the STEM Council is doing, from programs to building STEM ecosystems, to ending the shortage of science and math teachers, all those things that over the next few years will begin getting the modern learning system in place that will give us the workforce we need for a modern economy. I'm Lee Meadows. I lead the STEM Council. Easy to find. All you need to do is Google search Alabama STEM. That'll take you to our website. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you, Lee. I appreciate all that information. As the viewers can see, we've got a lot of opportunity in growing our STEM system across the state. I'm a STEM sort of guy, background in engineering, so I get it. It's extremely important. So we need all of you out there that have this capability of helping to join in the STEM program that we're building. So thanks again, Lee. We appreciate it. Appreciate your time and effort. And welcome to the team, Lawrence and Renee. Look forward to working with you. Now we have Melissa Goldberg, from Director of Competencies and Credentials for the Corporation for a Skilled Workforce. Melissa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you so much for including me this morning. Here we go. So yes, as Tim mentioned, I'm from Corporation for a Skilled Workforce. For those of you who don't know us, we're our 31-year-old national workforce policy organization, and we really look to catalyze change in education and labor market systems, policies, and practices to increase economic mobility. And we have sort of 5 areas of practice in which we focus, including improving practices and outcomes, an emphasis around competencies and credentials, looking at federal, state, and local systems change, focusing in on research and evaluation, and our newest sort of area of practice, trauma and resilience at work. But around competencies, we have a real vision around dramatically increasing the use of competencies and incremental and smaller credentials within learning and talent management systems, all in creating opportunities, removing barriers and creating opportunities for people who have traditionally been left out of labor market success. And so we were really fortunate a couple of years ago, based on work that we had done with the Lumina Foundation and the Connecting Credentials campaign, to have been brought on board and working with the Alabama Governor's Office of Education and Workforce Transformation and Nick Moore to help think through and provide an organizing construct around the opportunity to be able to build a set of competencies to help inform the creation of the talent triad. And we used sort of started with a case around the Alabama skills-based job description generator. And so what we did was we built on and developed and expanded the occupation-specific technical competencies that were part of the Alabama system and identified in tier 6, really focused in first on the tier 6 of the Alabama competency model. So our work was really focused around ensuring competency statements are standardized, that they reflect practices for well-written competency statements. We have looked around to identify additional credentials specific to those occupations that were the focus of the work, and really applied general levels of proficiency based on the 8 levels that came out of the Connecting Credentials campaign, and are part of a tool that Corporation for a Skilled Workforce has built called the Competency Calibrator. And really the emphasis is around applying those levels of proficiency that were foundational, applied, integrative, and creative. And so the whole focus and the structure for the competency audits that we created were first to sort of divide them out by sector, looking and focusing in on the occupations. We then identified a set of functions that were applied across the 16 different industry clusters within which all of the occupations fall. And then within that, devised a process for writing or rewriting competencies. And so we located and researched competencies across national and international competency frameworks associated with each of the ultimately 380 occupations that we audited. We looked and identified general competencies. We applied proficiency levels. As I mentioned, we created a set of business functions and those that were related to those functions that cut across sectors, all of the 16 sectors in all of the occupations. We developed a process to align the competencies to the functions and integrate the level 6 competencies. We also expanded them in some ways, adapted the language, and we created sort of a standardized format for creating and applying those competencies. And then ultimately, we completed a set of 380 audits across those 16 industry clusters. And the audits were basically were all around the high demand occupations across the state and within the regions of Alabama. And so this is an example of a competency audit. And so for each audit, we identified what the industry cluster was. In this case, it was health science. We identified the job title, which is a respiratory therapist in this case. We identified and shared the different competency sources where we were able to draw the competencies that we produced. We also looked to identify the associated credentials with each of the occupations so that to be able to tie in with the educational registry or the credential registry. Not so much for this particular example of respiratory therapists, but in many cases, there are sort of related titles that employers use when they're recruiting for the particular occupations. And so we articulated those there. And then for each audit, we identified what the function was, the business function that we had identified. Every competency within that function starts with a verb. It has context related to the particular function or the particular occupation within which it occurs. And then each of the competencies is then sort of the level. And so for each audit, it contains a number of these functions according to the particular occupation. So in addition to looking at the technical competencies for the occupations, we also look to align the tier 4 competencies, which were more of the ready to work competencies that were associated with the industry clusters as opposed to the individual occupations. And so for each one of those ready to work areas, we again look to establish clear competency statements, really helping thinking through what it is that someone needs to know in order to be able to work in that particular industry area. We look to establish and create standard language, thinking through the core concepts, what kinds of systems and processes, regulatory requirements, and a variety of different frameworks that cut across the sectors. We look to ensure that the competency language was standardized as I mentioned, they all start with verbs, and they really reflect the level of competency that someone would need to enter a particular industry. And then we look to capture sector-specific competencies that weren't included in the cross-cutting sectors. And so this is an example of the Tier 4 work. And again, as the Tier 6 audits were by occupation. The Tier 4 alignment work was really focused on the industry cluster. And so in this case, the example that I'm showing you again is in health sciences, and it focuses in on the various pathways that fall under health science. And again, looking at organized by the various functions. And then you'll see that we identified a set of cross-cutting competencies that cut across all of the 16 industry sectors. And here they're reflected in the black typeface. But then we found in a number of places, and for each one of the 16 industry clusters, we created these competencies that were more specific to the particular industry cluster. And in this case, that's identified in the purple writing. And so in some cases, it was a way of adapting. There might have been a common competency, but the context within which this was happening changed depending on the particular industry area. In some cases, there were specific competencies, like this one around understanding the need for patient care plans, that was specific to health sciences. And so for each one of the 16 industry clusters, we created a set of we aligned the Tier 4 competencies and identified those that were common across each of the sectors and those that were specific to the sector. And so ultimately, this past September, we provided to help inform the talent triad, and as a jumping off pointers, as I've heard Nick Moore say, kind of using as the DNA for the system of the talent triad, a big a consistent database of well-researched competency statements, thousands of competency statements, working really written in the context of the work within which that was taking place. We also shared the methodology that can be used annually to update this information, and really provided that data, which is being used now to be embedded in the talent triad applications. And the idea of really, because the functions cut across the 16 industry clusters, there is an ability then to analyze kind of transferable competencies, even if someone is moving within their particular industry cluster, or really being able to identify those competencies that might be applicable across industries, so that someone can make a move from one industry to another. So that's the work that we completed. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and share information about the work that we've done. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. We appreciate your work to help us remove the educational barriers in our state and increase our career opportunities for low-wage workers. Melissa and I got to spend a little time out at the National Governors Association here back last month. It was really enjoyable time, and she's on our team that helped present to the other states and did a great job. So thanks again, Melissa. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Our next speaker is Dr. Jeff Gray, co-chair of the Governor's Computer Science Advisory Council. So Dr. Gray, you've got the floor.
Thanks, Tim. Is my audio okay? Great, thanks. So a focus on my talk today will be on explaining why computer science is important to our state, with some history, some current status, and I look forward to some future things. If anyone's interested in any slides, my email address is here. I'd be glad to share those out to you. So the idea of the CS for Alabama movement is that every student in Alabama should have the opportunity to learn computer science. And the reason why that is important is because of the many opportunities for jobs across our state, from Google to Meta. We had Shipped on Campus looking at, chatting with our students about possible opportunities, all the work that's happening in Huntsville with the FBI and all the other cybersecurity. Computer science is driving a lot of the really high-tech workforce needs in our state. And in fact, it's also coming over to higher ed. Some of the top majors at our universities are computer science, as well as nationally. I just saw the University of Illinois, among all of their incoming freshman applicants, 16% of the applicants wanted to be computer science majors. So it's kind of crazy to think that just one major dominated the interest of those students. And that's because that's where a lot of the young folks are seeing where the opportunities will be in the future. In fact, in our own state, these are a few years old now, 3 to 5 years old, but they're all tracking the idea of where are the top jobs in Alabama. And if you look closely at these articles, they're referring to jobs that have high demand skills in software engineering, database management, cybersecurity, all these kind of things where we want to make sure that our own students in Alabama are equipped with those skills. We want to make sure that it's their homegrown skills and not that jobs that our own students don't have a chance to get. There's also, we refer to this as often, not all STEM jobs are created equally. So if you check out this New York Times article, there are some STEM areas where there's a lot of students and not as many jobs. And there's some places like computer science where there's still so many jobs and not enough students. We want to make sure we raise the awareness of where some of these jobs are across our state. So the beginning of CS in Alabama has a pretty dark picture. We tried to find back in 2006 who in terms of what educators and K-12 in our high schools were teaching computer science. We found about 4 or 5. So across the entire state, there were only a handful of teachers bringing these skills and these concepts to our students in what was even back then still a very highly desirable occupation. So we brought a national leader to UAB at the time, and she wrote an article about what if Alabama led the way and provided a roadmap, so to speak, of some of the things that were implemented over the past decade. So if you go back to that time in 2007, if you're looking at the College Board AP, which is the most rigorous computer science course we would have in high schools at that time, and even now, in the entire state of Alabama, 270,000 students, we only had 27 students in our state who were preparing for these high-tech jobs. And so right now we have high schools that have over 300 students taking that course. So one school is 10 times more than what our state was just 15 years ago. So this was kind of a shocker to many of us, and we wanted to work on addressing this issue. So over the years, we had support from Google and the National Science Foundation up until 2014, 2015, and they were helping to build this small army of educators. And then the huge shot in our arm, this is like I had to pinch myself when it happened, is when Governor Ivey came out and made computer science one of her 3 pillars of her strong start, strong finish. And the first meeting was 5 years ago. We just celebrated our 5th anniversary. And that was sort of the push we needed to really get computer science on the roadmap for many of the required stakeholders to make us, help us go to the next level. So all kinds of things like developing teacher preparation programs, certification, even standards, all came out of this initial effort from 5 years ago. And so Alabama today, computer science across our state, a much better picture. If you look at the AP computer science, we went from 27 to 2,800, and also a lot of diversity there. So much improvement. Each year, this number is growing and growing. And the AP course is not the only course that's offered across our state. There's several other courses as well. In fact, this is thanks to Amanda Dykes at the State Department, of the CS specialist. There's a dashboard, so you can go and check the website at the top that's mentioned there. And I think this is the 21-22. The new 22-23 will show even more increase in terms of schools meeting a legislation requirement we'll mention in a moment. I think we're around 80% of the schools that are offering some form of rigorous computer science, not just learning about how to use Microsoft Word, but actually understanding the deeper computational principles. So this dashboard is helping to track some of the progress and impact across the state. So the group code.org and another group called ESEP, working with the Computer Science Teachers Association, they release every year a report card, so to speak, of different states in terms of how they are progressing on 9 core policy measures. And these policy measures are right here. There's things like, do we have a director of computer science at the state? So Don Morrison in the State Department of Education is our director. Do we have funding? Do we have teacher preparation programs? Do we have standards, certifications, and so on? So these are the 9 core principles that the nationally people across the computer science education space are aspiring to. And it's really exciting that the 2019 Computer Science Act, which the Governor's Computer Science Advisory Council helped advocate and our legislators were really deeply supportive of, that gave us the ability to reach all of these 9 policies. And Alabama was like the 5th state in the whole country to do this. And many states are asking, you know, how did this happen in Alabama? We're trying to share some of that. But all these things kind of put Alabama on the map in terms of K-12 computer science. In fact, if you look at this, this is the kind of roadmap of how other states are doing. In the Southeast, we're leading, and you can see there's only about 5 other states that have all 9 of those policies. You know, states like Texas and California and you know, New York are you know, 3 or 4 policies behind us. And but we still have to keep the momentum. There's you know, states wanting to catch where we're at, try to replicate some of this. So there's more things we'll be looking at to go to the next level in bringing these opportunities to our students. This is also the percent of students who have a computer science, or percent of schools that have a computer science course. So 82% of the high schools in Alabama, it should be 100% according to legislation, but there's some exceptional issues. 82% of the schools are meeting that goal. Only 51% nationally are doing that. The one thing that's not mentioned here is, even though we have the courses in many of the schools, we only have about 5 to 6% of our students actually taking those courses. So that's the next thing we're going to address. How do we work towards increasing the participation for and enrollment in those courses that are across most of our schools? And this is also more about the percentage of public schools. You can see how we grew as a state. From 2017, we had 39%. Now we're nearly 82%. And the really exciting thing also is the diversity in terms of where these courses are offered. It's just not located in Huntsville. So we have many rural schools where computer science is being taught, same course as some of the schools that have, you know, a higher concentration of STEM workers. So some recent success stories I just wanted to share. We have something called the National Center for Women in IT. So this is the Aspirations event, honors high school young women across our state. We've had national winners of this award, and we have a banquet here in Tuscaloosa. And we have just recently the 2022-2023 applications came in, and we'll be evaluating those soon for a banquet in the spring. We do need a lot of support for this, so that we have very little to no industry support on these programs that are working towards raising the awareness of students and trying to get students more into these careers. But we need help, you know, for corporate support in some of these efforts as well. We also have robotics contests, summer camps, other kinds of contests that are also opportunities to collaborate. The Legacy program is one I wanted to just mention recently. This is sponsored by the National Science Foundation. This is in collaboration with University of Alabama and Tuskegee University. What we're doing here is preparing students mainly from rural high schools, and specifically Black females, to be ready and equipped to take the AP course in computer science. And we had 77% of the students pass the test in the past May test offering, which is, you know, national, way above the national average. So we're really excited about programs like that as well, that's bringing computer science across all areas of our state. Also wanted to mention coming up in the spring is the Alabama Governor's App Challenge. So this is 4 or 5 years in the works now that Governor Ivey has been sponsoring. Some details still, if you have children, three grade bands of elementary, middle, and high school. If you know children in that area, here are some of the dates. January 13th, when the submissions are made, and there'll be some evaluations at the district and state levels, and sometime in April will be the state announcement of all the awardees. So that's kind of where we're at now in terms of the history of computer science, the growth that's happened over the past 15 years, the support that we've had from many different stakeholders along the way, especially the Governor's Computer Science Council, and the legislation in 2019 was vital to that, and just the number of educators across our state. You know, there's been hundreds and hundreds of educators trained, both from federal support of grants as well as support from the Education Trust Fund. In particular, our colleagues at A+ College Ready train hundreds of teachers each year as well. So just wanted to mention these opportunities and the way that we're raising awareness so that our own students in Alabama will be available to take on these really important and highly desirable jobs in our own state. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gray. We certainly appreciate your efforts to improve the computer science education in Alabama. And all those of you listening in from the industry side, heed what he says. We need help. We need some industry support. So if you're interested in doing that, you call Dr. Gray or myself or Nick Moore, and we'll get y'all matched up together. This is something very, very important to our state, and I appreciate again, Dr. Gray, all your efforts in this endeavor. Today, we have a few extra minutes on our program, so I'm going to yield the floor to Nick Moore. He's going to give us our labor update and bring us up to speed on a few other items that are going on in the state. Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So I will begin by giving a little bit of an update from last week's State Board of Education meeting. And it was a good meeting because 2 important steps were taken by the school board. Number one, something that the Workforce Council and the governor and a lot of advocates listening today worked on for almost 5 years, is passing an administrative rule code that will have our students earn at least one of our 10 college and career readiness indicators. And because they're AP and some are dual enrollment, a lot of our, for example, computer science courses would count, or apprenticeship, getting accepted into the military, passing score on the ACT. So there's a myriad different indicators out there for students to meet this new rule. But it's important for not only making sure that students are ready for their next step, but also it helps to standardize graduation requirements, because other than just having to pass 24 credits, there was really nothing beyond that in regard to graduation requirements. And so we would like to say that every course offered everywhere in the state is the same level of quality. And in some cases there are, but what this does is make sure there's another indicator that goes beyond those credits to make sure that students are ready for the next step. And we're going to be working to expand access to these equitably across the state. So for example, the State Board of Education revised their budget request to the governor that will then go to the Executive Budget Office for review to add a $25 million college and career readiness attainment fund that would help to provide some seed money, if you will, for schools to get their indicators going. Some of them are more capital intensive than others. In fact, a lot of them are already offered at no cost to the school now, like ACT work keys. But we'll continue expanding those to everywhere in the state. Another thing that was done was to pass a resolution that will allow the State Department to start collecting data on chronic absenteeism for educators. So there's been a lot of work done in reducing teacher and student chronic absenteeism. The student absenteeism is one of our ESSA indicators. In Alabama, chronic absenteeism is defined as missing 10% or more of a school day. So for a student, that would be 18 days. It's also would be the same because it's about how many days of the school year you miss for a teacher. So missing 18 or more days a year. Now, the Federal Office of Civil Rights used to collect some data on teacher absenteeism, and they quit doing that about 5 years ago. And so there's currently no way to know what our levels are. That data 5 or 6 years ago was looking at it around, even above 30%. I don't know where it is now, but I would imagine it's probably gone down some because one of the major contributing issues was not being able to roll over sick days. And due to the leadership of Representative Baker, that has been addressed along with the RSA board and others in the legislature. So we've made some progress on that, but the idea is we really need to know where we are. Because if you think about it, if the teacher is absent, then that's like the whole class being absent because there's not high quality instruction going on. So if you got a teacher that's absent 18 days, which I certainly don't think there's a whole lot of our teachers being absent 18 days, but that's why we want to know. We just need to have the data. And then if the student is absent 18 days, that's like missing 20% of the school year. And that really is like, being out once a week, every week. So that compounds and adds on. We held our own in our NAEP scores, and we've got some limited growth in ACAP, and we're starting to go in the right direction. So we need to look at how to sustain these type of gains and get under the hood and think about what are the things that we can do between now and the next time we take the NAEP in 2 years to make sure that, a lot of the rest of the country was out of school for 2 years, and Alabama stayed in school due to leadership of the governor and just the demands of the people of Alabama. But the rest of the country, rightfully and hopefully, will catch back up. So we don't want to see, in 2 years, we go back down to where we started from just because the rest of the country popped up. We're going to have to sustain our gains and build those gains. And I think we have some real gains. It's true that a lot of our scores, because the rest of the country went down, we stayed in school. But we also have standards and assessment system, stable leadership for the first time, all working together. At least for the past 20 years, we haven't had that. So we can build on that, but it's going to take doing things like reducing chronic absenteeism. And the first step is knowing what the data are. And it's not going to add to the paperwork burden because this is something that can be done through the central office locally without putting the burden on teachers or principals or anybody right in the thick of it. So that's kind of where we are with the school board meeting, and just a couple updates about so we don't have our October. This is one of those months to where if the webinar was next week, we'd have some fresh data, but we're still looking at our data from September, and we've been at 2.6% unemployment for 3 or 4 months, which is good. And that still continues to be the lowest and around most of our states, except Florida has got us by 1/10 of a point. So almost lowest in the Southeast, and certainly one of our lowest ever historically in Alabama. Labor force participation rate continues to not be as high as the rest of our peers. You can see substantially higher than Mississippi and a little bit higher than South Carolina, but we continue to got to plug away at that labor force participation rate. And we've got some new data on our labor force goals, particularly for our special populations. So that's our regions, and our workforce partners have all received that. But 1% of labor force participation is 50,000 people, approximately. So if we're talking about how are we going to continue growing our economy and tight labor markets and low labor force participation contributing to inflation and other things, there's nothing more important that we can do. Plus, just from an equity standpoint, of bringing people who historically have not had the same opportunity in the labor force education system. So that's why we're so focused on workforce training, competency-based pathways. And we had a good meeting in Seattle. Chairman McCartney was there with us. Melissa was there with us, talking about our talent triad. And this is a system that is going to take all of our different learning assertions, including military, joint service transcripts, somebody that's got on-the-job training, different things that you may have done working as self-employed, and being able to translate those into competency so you can transact those in the labor market, cash them in for traditional learning experiences like a 2-year degree. So you can go see the community college system or go see Dr. Gray and get a PhD in computer science eventually. So it's an idea of using competency-based education to give multiple pathways to people so that we can get opportunities for people to meet their needs historically, where the 4-year residential model or even a 2-year program may not be what's in somebody's short-term interest. They maybe need to get a 6-week program to get a job, then to move on to the next step, but to continue being able to not lose that as they go. And so our talent triad consists of a digital wallet we call the learning and employment record, called the asset, that will be somebody's, just like I said, a wallet to put all their competencies and different forms of learning in it. And then employers making job descriptions are able to take the DNA for their in-demand jobs and connect that to people that are looking for a job. So it's a talent marketplace. And something like that is needed if we're going to get any increase in our labor force participation rate. We're going to work to get this put into our one-stop centers. All of our community college partners are helping pilot this in manufacturing and healthcare. And we've got a lot of excitement from the Hospital Association and several of our manufacturing associations. So the people listening here also are going to be a big part of this, because we're going to need to ask you to adopt skills-based hiring, to think about competency-based programs, because these are not only good to help transition into a more digital, fast-paced way of connecting talent to opportunity, but also to help find people in a tight labor market. So if you look at our labor force participation over the past year, we have ticked up a little bit, but it just kind of goes up and down and vacillates. But we'll take the about percentage point increase we've had over the past year. And looking at our unemployment rate by county, you can see that most of our counties are enjoying under 2.5%, and several are even in the 1% range. Looking at it by area, North Alabama continues to be at the lowest at 2.2%. The Central Alabama area and West Alabama and East Alabama continue to be at the highest, and Wiregrass is and Southwest Alabama are ticked up a little bit higher at 3.2%. So that's a quick preview, Mr. Chairman, of our labor market situation. Has not changed much over the last several months, but we do have some exciting updates that have happened with the state school board, and we'll continue working to get our talent triad launched. And anybody interested listening in that wants more information about how they can get involved in the pilot, please send me an email or give me a call.
Okay, thank you, Nick. That was a great update. Appreciate the information. For everybody out there, you'll see a common theme today. We're talking about STEM and computer science, and Nick's got all the graphs and numbers about our labor situation. So it's all about numbers, and that's important. We've got to get a robust STEM system across the state, which is interesting because we have some very, very STEM-oriented industries in this state. We just don't have the foundational support in our schools across the state that we need. So we're working to build Now, that's not to say we don't have some great schools that are great in STEM education, because we do. If we didn't, we wouldn't have these industries in Huntsville, Mobile, Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, that are all STEM related. So I encourage you all that are listening to get involved in the STEM program, because it helps you, it helps our state. The other thing is about I want to give an applause to the state Board of Education members that had the foresight and the courage to vote for the CCR credentials. It seems like a no-brainer to me and others on the Alabama Workforce Council, because the CCR, the College and Career Readiness Indicators, actually put some meaning to a high school diploma. Before now, a high school diploma did not mean that much, because we used to have a graduation exam. So that gave some emphasis on that you were able to meet the criteria to be a high school graduate. But for a period of time, we have not. So the College and Career Ready Indicators give someone who's searching for an employee that has only got a high school education, at least it gives some information that person possesses the skills and competencies to learn about the work that they're going to possibly hire them into. So we're extremely pro-education in our group. We want everybody educated. We want them educated in the skills, and they need the competencies to do the work to make a career path that'll lead them to a life of happiness and fulfillment. So so again, one message is, if you don't measure it, it doesn't mean anything. So we're going to measure things, and our education committee works very closely with the Department of Education, Dr. Mackey, Dr. Hall, and the state board, and we have a good relationship. We may, we have robust debates, let's put it that way, but we're going to continue to push to improve our education system. And we're going to make alliances with everyone that we can to improve our state. Under Governor Ivey's leadership, we've made a lot of progress over the last 4 years, and we intend to make a lot more in the next 4. So again, thanks to all of the speakers today. We appreciate all your information. And for those of you that are listening, remember this will all be on the AlabamaWorks.com website for future reference. So spread the word. This is good information for you to share and learn about what we're doing in Alabama to improve our educational efforts and our workforce. So until next month, which will be our next month's seminar, will be on December 12th at 9 a.m. Have a